So we're going to discuss United's controversial singing section. Joined is Justin and Aled, whose uncle, Graham Moore, played under Busby in 1963. Very exciting stuff. Aled, how do you feel about the singing section?
I'm all for it. I know it's something that's been going on for the last 2 years, and it's something I'm quite interested in. Obviously, been sat in the East Stand over the last couple of years. It seemed to have got sort of pretty quiet. So it's something I've really been excited about.
Justin, you're losing your seat in the J Stand. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's a disgrace, to be honest with you. I was in J Stand. I mean, I've only been there a couple of seasons, but I know there's plenty of lads that have been there, 10 seasons, 20 seasons. There's a guy I know that's got a plaque on his seat because he's been there that long, who's now being told he has to move despite sitting in that seat and supporting the club he's 80 odd years old and he's been there for sort of supporting the club for 60 odd years. So yeah, I think it's a disgrace that fans are being forcibly moved out of their seats to try and create an atmosphere. And I think that the idea that you need a singing section to create an atmosphere is a false one. I think we've seen atmosphere at the Arsenal game, the Liverpool game. There wasn't a singing section then. And I think that too many people that aren't getting moved and I've seen a lot of people who don't even go to Old Trafford sticking their nose in and saying, oh, there should be a singing section. Against Sociedad, I thought the singing section worked. There was a great atmosphere in a game that perhaps wasn't the most exciting game, but it got going and the crowd was really up for it. Against Fulham, we had a singing section and it was a bit of a disaster. I was in J Stand for the singing section. There was arguing between fans. There was kicking off between United fans. The atmosphere wasn't that great. And I don't think it really worked. There was chants sort of starting and different chants starting from other parts of the ground. It didn't really get going. I think, yeah, the atmosphere does need to improve, but we've shown this season, without a singing section, it can do. And to say to, hundreds and thousands of fans, you're going to have to move because we're having a singing section, I think is outrageous.
Okay, Aled, any response to that? And also, do you think this is an initiative by the club for fans when in evaluation it looks like actually they don't care about the fans, they're not listening to people like Justin, they're just doing whatever they think is best?
I can only sort of sympathise with these guys. I mean, I've not been sat in these stands for the last sort of 5 years. And, I think these guys have got gold and platinum season tickets. And I totally agree with him there where these guys are being kicked out. Because initially, my understanding of it was it's going to be in the L stand, which is where the away end is. Now, I think the only issue is if we, as a singing section, sit in the L stand, then the away fans need to be relocated elsewhere. And then it's going to cause a knock-on effect. So other season ticket holders are going to have to move anyway. So this whole singing section is going to create a major problem, regardless of where in the stadium, that they're going to be sat. So it's going to be, people are going to be annoyed at any part of the singing section, whether it's in K stand, J, L. So it is a real issue, yes. But for me personally, I just think that we need a singing section. And of course, I was at all the games, Arsenal. I was at the Bayern Munich game, and I thought the atmosphere was really good. But at the lesser games where we tend to struggle this season, we just haven't got behind the players.
Yeah, but okay, Fulham was a lesser game. Where we didn't get behind the team, and we had the singing section there, and it didn't work. The atmosphere was poor. The performance on the pitch didn't help, admittedly. And it was a lesser game where you think, right, great idea, a singing section in a lesser game where fans aren't necessarily up for it, and it just didn't work. And yet, despite the fact it didn't work, despite the fact fans don't want to move from J Stand, despite the fact no one's really been consulted about this other than a few so-called fan groups, in inverted commas, the club are going ahead with it anyway.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
Justin, do you think maybe it's a case that if people want the singing section, that someone is going to have to move their seats and it's you that has to bite the bullet? And in compensation, the club have offered you free cup tickets for home games next season. Do you think that's a sort of fair trade?
I don't think it's a fair trade at all, to be honest with you. I'd rather not have that offer and keep my seat, if I'm completely honest. That's what I'd rather do. I'd rather just stay where I'm sitting. And, I can't speak for everyone in J, but I've got a lot of friends who are in J, who've been there a lot longer than I have, who would also prefer to stay sitting where they are rather than be forced out and get free cup games. I mean, yes, it's a gesture by the club and it's appreciated because, times are hard and any sort of help can always help us. But the fact is, the matter is, you know, we don't want to move and we're being forced to move. So to say you're going to have to move, but we're going to give you free cup tickets, it's not really good enough, in my opinion. You know, the fans weren't really consulted about this properly. And by and large, in fact, I can't even think of anyone in J Stand who wants to move, who's being told to, if I'm honest. And I've spoken to quite a few people about this. And I think it's just another case of the club disregarding the actions, the want of the fans, and doing what they want. And I know what you mean about the atmosphere, and it is a case of, well, what do we do about the atmosphere? Something needs to be done, but we've seen it. We can rise to the occasion without a singing section. We've seen it this season plenty of times, and it's not a case of the singing section is the only way to get an atmosphere at Old Trafford. That's a nonsense, and I think there's other avenues they've not looked at.
Aled, clearly this isn't an ideal situation. What do you think other ideas could be that might work, like safe standing or perhaps a singing section in the Stretford end?
Yeah, that's something I'd really be interested in, a safe standing, because you see it in the German leagues. In every ground in the German leagues, there's safe standing. Now, when people are standing, that creates an atmosphere. When people are sat down, it doesn't create an atmosphere. And that is something that I personally would have rather seen than a singing section. Whereas in the East Stand Tier 2, or maybe, you know, in the Stretty, you know, sort of Tier 2, that we have, you know, a safe standing option. I mean, yeah, that to me is probably, you know, a win-win situation.
Yeah, I'm showing my age a little bit here, but when I started going to Old Trafford, you know, on my own without my dad taking me, and the scoreboard paddock was still around, and I used to go in there with my mates and stand for the entire game, because obviously it was a standing section. The atmosphere was great. There was no sort of issues there with safety, whatnot. Right near the away fans, it kept, you know, it was opposite the Stretford end. You couldn't fault it. It was a fantastic atmosphere. And why they can't look at something like that instead of this singing section, which just seems to have turned United fans against each other, I have no idea. It
has. I've been on sort of Twitter the last couple of days, and some of the abuse I've seen towards each other. Instead of, you know, having a debate and, you know, sort of sitting down, and I've noticed that there's fan groups that have been set up now against and for, and things are just seem to be spiraling, you know, out of hand. And something does need to be done. I agree totally.
Yeah, okay, it's not just on social media where we've seen fans fighting against fans. As I go back to the ground as well, you know, the singing section against Fulham. I don't want to repeat myself, but the lad next to me was arguing with the lad behind me about who was singing and who wasn't, and it was a farce, and it's not what you want to see at Old Trafford. Never mind on Twitter.
What do you think is the future of this then, Justin? Do you think this will happen? Will it work?
Well, we've seen protests by fans before, and it's got us nowhere. The Glazers or the powers that be don't listen to us. I think they'll try it. It might work, it might not. I think it's going to happen. I think what we'll do is we'll see it for a season. If it isn't successful, if there is a bit of a fallout, then we may see it revert back to the previous season. But by that time, everyone's been moved, so it's, you know, it's a bit of a nonsense either way. I think, yeah, a singing section would have been great if we could have found a way of doing it without moving everyone. But because we couldn't, then we shouldn't have one.
Do we all think that the sensible thing to do is lower ticket prices, lower the price of beer, and let us all in a little bit earlier?
Definitely. I don't think anyone would be complaining and protesting or arguing about that one. Cool. But it'll never happen.
We live and dream. Guys, thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks.
You have lost the fans tonight. You don't deserve the fans. You don't deserve anything from this club. You got the job on the technicality of a legend who recommended you. You are nothing, you are a fool, and you are a waste of time. Good night.